Hi, I'm Fred Ansell. I'm an attorney with the Justice Department.
Hi, I'm Candida Steele, and I'm a judge with the U.S. Civilian Board of Contract Appeals, and I hear federal government cases all across the country.
Oregon, my name is Rick Hardy. I'm one of the Hardy Boys. And I'm professor and chair of the Department of Political Science at Western Illinois University, and I teach constitutional law, and I've been involved in this program since 1987. And if you will introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Gina Filippi. I'm the captain of Unit 4, and today we're going to talk about the principles in the Constitution and how they shape American government. I'd like to introduce my teacher, Tim Swinehart, my coaches, Ben Glasser and Lynn Duffbach, and our principal, Paige Chapman.
Hello, my name is Peter Duffbach.
It's great to be here. I'm Catherine Wu.
Good afternoon. I'm Warren Foster.
Hi, I'm Ariel Economy. I'm Hannah Gold. Thank you for being here.
All right. The question, I'm sure you know what it is already, but for the benefit of the audience, I'll read it aloud. Congress is the only national legislature in the world whose members are elected both separately from the executive branch and entirely from single member districts. What are the benefits or advantages of this arrangement? What might be the advantages of mingling executive and legislative powers, such as the British parliamentary system, and the disadvantages? Why has the creation of congressional districts been controversial throughout American history? You may begin.
The separation of our executive and legislature is our most distinguishing factor from a parliamentary system and has both advantages and disadvantages. Single-member districts are also unique and similarly have both positive and negative aspects.
The Electoral College in Article 2, Section 1, and the 12th Amendment, along with the ineligibility clause in Article 1, Section 6, ensures separate elections for Congress and the President. Additionally, under Article 2, Section 1, Article 2, Section 2, and the 17th Amendment, both Congress and the President are popularly elected. This strengthens checks and balances as both branches claim the support of the people when advancing their agendas.
Our system of checks and balances lessens the possibility for tyranny. When the President and Congress clash, they must compromise, creating a more deliberative government.
However, this is not always possible. Critical legislation in the United States is often stalled by one branch. Congress can refuse to pass the President's agenda, as in the prolonged debate on health care reform. Conversely, the President can veto legislation, forcing a 2/3 vote in Congress under Article 1, Section 7. President Cleveland overused his veto power, stopping increased government spending and halting benefits for Civil War veterans.
A parliamentary system would have been best for American government because these clashes do not occur as often. There, the Prime Minister is selected to advance the agenda of the majority coalition. Because of a single legislative agenda, the executive and the legislature work together for efficient reforms. In response to the recent economic crisis, British Parliament spoke with a unified voice, instituting an ambitious stimulus package and credit card reform.
But the parliamentary system has its downfalls. The minority is often entirely excluded from the legislative process, leaving major groups without a voice in government. As Madison said in Federalist 51, if the majority be united by a common interest, the rights of the minority will be insecure.
The framers also rejected a parliamentary system because they wanted an executive who could act independently and not be subject to the whims of Congress. Separation of power gives energy to the executive, a requisite of good government.
Single-member districts were standardized in the House of Representatives in 1842. Though each state has 2 senators, members of the Senate are considered from single-member districts because of the staggering clause in Article 1, Section 3.
Single-member districts provide a clear link between a representative and their constituents. As Madison asserts in Federalist 52, it is essential to liberty that government in general should have an immediate dependence on the people. In the United States, representatives should follow their constituents' interests instead of voting along party lines. As a result, party control would be limited, and the people would have a stronger voice in government.
The creation of congressional districts has always been controversial. Unequal districting has plagued the country since ratification. However, the court refused to rule on the issue until Baker v. Carr in 1962, when the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment was used to address unequal representation. This led to the requirement of equal population in districts in Westbury v. Sanders, and the precedent of one person, one vote in Gray v. Sanders in 1964.
To sustain this principle, congressional districts are redrawn following every census, so unequal district population is no longer a problem. However, gerrymandering, the skewed drawing of district lines, still polarizes the political arena.
Though the Voting Rights Act of 1965 attempted to reduce the effects of skewed districting, it has proved largely unsuccessful. In Beef versus Jubileer, the court recognized there is no clear standard for political gerrymandering. With no standard, districting by partisan bodies will continue to be a problem.
All right, well, let's begin with some follow-up questions. Councilman, would you like to begin?
After the Bay of Pigs failure, President Kennedy brought in the CIA director and said to him, if this were a parliamentary system, I would have to resign. But this is a presidential system, so you're going to have to resign. Why does it work differently in the two systems? And in this particular area, which system do you think has it right?
Well, even though the parliament can boot out the prime minister if they dislike him, the prime minister still has a relatively strong control over who is beneath him. And so it's not really the difference there, because the prime minister can still boot out the CIA director, if there was one in Britain, for bad decision making.
Additionally, I think that with the huge bureaucracy, which includes over 4 million people, since there are heads of different bureaus, oftentimes the president may shift the blame towards one of these department heads rather than the unitary executive theory, which in that case it would be his fault and he would be responsible for the entire executive branch.
And the main reason for this is because in a presidential system, the president is elected entirely separate from the legislature. In comparison, in the parliamentary system, the prime minister is elected by the majority party. Because of this, he could be directly responsible for the faults of for a major fault such as the Bay of Pigs.
In this case, I would have to say that maybe the parliamentary system has it right, because instead of having under Article 2, Section 1, a 4-year term, in a parliamentary system, if something happens and the prime minister really messes up, then he can be taken out of power and a better leader can be selected for the people.
My Democratic congressman voted against the health care bill, perhaps because he feared he might not be reelected. What do you think of voting based on self-interest like that?
I think the framers would not approve of voting based on self-interest like this. They originally intended for the congressmen to represent their constituents, which is why they created single-member districts, so the congressman would have a direct connection with their constituents.
However, if a representative is voting because he thinks that he will be not be re-elected, then I think he's doing his job, because a representative needs to represent his constituents. And if his constituents won't vote for him, if he doesn't vote for the healthcare bill, then he needs to vote on his constituents' interests rather than his own.
What these two describes, Catherine has been describing, there's the delegate form of representation and then the trustee form of representation. And in the delegate form of representation, you're sending your congressman directly to represent your views, which I feel is maybe what your congressman is doing, versus in the trustee form, you send a congressman to make his own mind or her own mind and decide what is really the best.